In the last movie, I mentioned that the next step is to reproduce some of these borders. Now, the most obvious border is the one up here towards the top of this container div. But there's also a subtle border up here towards the top dividing the header and the page elements. In fact, if you choose the zoom tool, with the zoom tool, you can zoom into that section and you'll begin to see that light border. So we want to add that. And we have two options. We can either add it as a bottom border to the header element or a top border to the page element. So what we want to do is jump back into our editors. I'm inside of Dreamweaver. Let's go ahead and add it to the page element. So inside your style sheet file, you want to find the page selector. And inside the selector, we want to go ahead and type in the border top property. With the border top property, we want to set the size to 1 pixel. We're going to set the style to solid. And the color is going to be a hex code. And the hex code is going to be 74B7C3, which is a lightish blue color. That's all we really need to do here. The other thing that we want to do is create some separation between the header and the page content. And we can do that by using the padding property. So here I'm going to go ahead and type in padding. And in this case, we want to add the padding to the top. So we're going to go ahead and type in padding top, and we're going to set that to 49 pixels. So that looks good. If we go ahead and save this, we should be all set. We could come out and preview it, but before we do, what I'd like to do is also generate this border that we see here. But not only do we have this border that we have to create, we also have to make sure that this div container has a white background. So again, we need to return back to the style sheet file. And inside the style sheet file, if you take a look at our selector page, we want to be a little bit more specific than that. So if we return back to the HTML document, you'll notice that we have the div element that has an ID of page, but nested within that div element is another div element that has an ID of container. Now this ID really should be a class. What we can do is target this div element that uses the class container, but we can be very specific and say that we want to target this container only when it appears inside of a div element with an ID of page. So let's come back to the style sheet file and write that selector. So we need to target the page ID, but more specifically, we want to target the div element when it has the container class applied to it. So we're going to go ahead and type in div.container. Then we're going to open up a curly bracket and close it. And inside of this selector, we're going to go ahead and type in border-top. And we're going to set the thickness to 3 pixels. It's going to have a style of solid. And the color is going to be a hex code, which is going to be 367D8D, which is a darker blue. And of course, we also want to set the background of that container to be white. So we can go ahead and type in background and then just use the hex code FFF to do that. Go ahead and save the style sheet file, come back into the index.html file, and in order for us to see what this will look like, we need to add some content to this div container. So I'm just going to add a couple break elements here temporarily. Again, this will give us the ability to actually see the white background. We should see the border, but now we'll also see some of that white background. So go ahead and save the HTML file, and go ahead and preview that in Chrome or Safari. And when you do, you see the white background for that nested div, and you also see the border here, and you also see it here. So we're making progress here. We now have the main area of the page defined. In the next movie, what we need to do is think about how we can start building some of these elements in here, like this hello button and this bar that you see here, and also some of this content as well.